beginning.
Here we go. It's one of those things where if someone dislikes you enough to leave a dislike, you're doing it right.
Here's the stream. Okay, we're live on YouTube. And come on, Craig. Come on so I can say the thing. I'm just going to say it. Hi, Mia. How you doing? Craig is not coming, is he?
Hello.
I'm going to try inviting Craig. Craig is our recording robot, John, by the way.
I thought it was a person.
Right, here he is.
Now recording.
There we go.
Welcome to the Yanggang Roundtable. It is 2:05 p.m. Saturday, February 20th? No. Is it the 20th?
Yes.
It is the 20th.
2021. Okay.
One more week in February, and then it's March.
You know, next week is our 1-year anniversary at the show. It's February 28th. So about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember it because it was like right on the cusp of the virus.
You've been here for the whole time.
Yeah.
How have you managed?
I remember it was like right after Yang dropped out was when this show started. So
yeah, I felt like I had to do something to not fall into despair. I'm glad I did this, and we're all together, and we've had a nice year. So Jon Munitz is here, and we're all very happy to have him. Thank you for coming. Welcome to the show. It's always good to talk to you. We had a little fun before the show talking about breakfast.
Yeah, we had a little bit of fun trading horror stories on coffee, but it's great to be back on the program. Thank you all for having me on.
Thank you for joining.
How you doing?
What's going on with you lately?
Well, we've been trying to go through a brand transition. So we had been doing the Hill of Roses in 2020, and we had done some soul searching after the November elections of what we wanted to do as a long-term plan. And we decided we wanted to move from the nonprofit model to a startup so that the people there could be extra motivated to work there and eventually have full-time jobs and have ownership in the team. And we wanted to go with a brand change from the Hill of Roses to the People's Basics. And we wanted to do that brand change for two reasons. One, we didn't feel like the Hill of Roses was properly communicating politics when people first heard it initially. And we think when people hear the People's Basics, they immediately gravitate towards a political lens. And then the second thing is for the people who do take it in a political context, the Hill of Roses having the rose symbology was a bit ostracizing to some folks, and the people who we want to actually advocate to adopt our agenda of universal basics tend to be a little bit more moderate and conservative, and that rose might be a turnoff for them. So we wanted to make it a little bit more accessible to the people we want to convince.
I think that's very smart. That all intuitively makes sense to me. I mean, the People's Basics resonates with me much more than the Hill of Roses, which does sound like, if you're an outsider, it can be a little intimidating. It's like, what is this? This sounds sort of clandestine. Maybe I don't want to investigate, you know?
Or maybe they'll think it's like one of those like liberal to liberal. Oh, roses bleeding.
Yeah, it sounds like a burning.
And I'll say this too. Like, even people who know me in like the Yang Gang have like some resistance just when they see that. They might know it's mine, but like they see the rose and they have reactions because, you know what, not all roses are particularly nice people. Even if we agree with them on policy, they have just bad experiences working with them during
all the roses have thorns.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you'll benefit. But
we are actually still preserving the name in a slight way. So what we're doing is one of the things that we're producing at the People's Basics is a comic series, and that comic series is going to keep the name The Hill of Roses. And that's going to be coming out in March, as well as our new website. So we have a lot of new content. We're creating like live streams, podcasts, comic series, articles, and we're basically creating content like every week. So it's really great. It's not just a brand change. We have a lot of content that's been coming out and new formats too. Like, for instance, the main show, which used to just be myself interviewing people, has now moved to a new main format, which is myself and my co-host, Jackie Sawicki. And so far, we've put out only one episode on healthcare and an interview with Jen Perelman. But we have great guests on, and we're talking about a specific universal basic each week. So the next episode this upcoming Tuesday is democracy. Then we're doing freedom, justice, and security. Then we're doing education, basic income, like child development. And we have great guests to come too. Like, we got Adam Christensen upcoming, then Richard Ojeda after that, then Liam O'Mara. Then we're talking to Scott Santens, then Marianne Williamson, and then David Kim. So we got a good schedule upcoming.
You really have done the work. That's a hell of a lineup, and it's really heartening to see that you have your focus where it belongs on, like in your name, the people's basics. You really can't get better, because the game of the news cycle is, to distract us from what we need to be working on politically with whatever crap is going on, whatever palace intrigue or something. And you keep bringing it back. This is wonderful. All those guests are perfect. Man, I hope that affects change, right? I feel like there's still this disconnect. Like, when are we going to affect the change?
I know. And especially with the ongoing, stimulus talks, it's just I get my hope up. It's we're making all this progress and momentum, and we hear some nice rhetoric, but it's where's the results?
Lip
we put in all this work, and it's just feeling like lip service.
Well,
and
they're
so
on
you're right
now. So
how about if we join a new thing people against lip service?
So, I mean, that's a good method. We should talk about it. Absolutely. You know what? People don't have enough of an idea of that concept.
Well, it's more that they're going after a political career rather than fighting for political change.
Yeah, careerism is, I guess, the term thrown around.
The big thing
that's definitely part of it, too. But, I also think there's just inherent structural things. For instance, we get so many excuses because of the frickin' filibuster. And it's some of these archaic things that we need to just fundamentally reform if we want to have these people work for us. I agree. There's going to be some corruption,
change. Remember, Joe Biden, nothing fundamentally will change. So the fundamentals, the things that must change, are the things we absolutely can't.
I do think, I get that. I do have my own criticism of him. But, his quote there was technically, your lives, because he was talking to a bunch of just very wealthy people in the room, your lives basically will not fundamentally change. And that still is a problem. They should have their lives be a little less luxurious. But I think there are some changes he wants. It's just not nearly far enough. I think Joe in general, other than, let's say Wall Street and foreign policy particularly, generally goes in the right direction, but, just not nearly far enough.
Yeah, he takes, a 6-inch step in the right direction. He's like, here I am.
Well, I gotta say, any step in the right direction is an improvement to going backwards we have been. So that is something.
It is, but we can't just keep accepting ineffective solutions indefinitely and dying.
Pushing, man.
We
don't accept
Mia, we can't hear you.
That's why
we can't hear you.
You can't? I thought Shale was responding.
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can as well.
It must be on your end. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Strange Discord. I don't know.
2022 is not too far away. People are gearing up for
it is. And it's does electoralism work? I hope so. I really have a crisis of faith in electoralism. I think it might just not work at all anymore, and I'm afraid of that.
I'm just saying, if we don't see the 2000 in 100 days in, we're gonna bang on that so hard, because immediately means immediately. It doesn't mean
What happens if in 2022 all these great candidates who we all phone bank for, put our time and money into, it seems like they're going to win, and then just mysteriously they lose, and everyone's like, sorry, establishment again, and we don't know why, and it just seems like, I don't know, maybe some votes aren't being
here's my problem with that. It just seems like sometimes we spread ourselves too thin. The progressive movement in general tends to be a little bit more people who are not as affluent and therefore have not as much potential time nor capital to be able to give. And so we have to be a lot more targeted with how we get seats swapped. And so, in my opinion, you can't just go in every seat in the nation. You have to be a little bit more strategic in resources. And I think we did not do that well this cycle, but we did still get some people through, and we are gradually getting some change.
Are we going to repeat that? Sorry, but I think what's going to stop us from repeating that mistake next cycle?
Well, I think it is trying to make sure that we have leaders who are sending this message of let's be focused. You can't just spread the message thin. I get that people wanted to go off on all their side projects. One of the things I got very frustrated about during the 2020 cycle is a large faction of the yanggang, and you're free to do this, but I think it was a waste of time personally, wanted to do these Unity 2020 things. And all this focus on just top of the ticket things are a real waste of time when they're not the people who legislate. It is Congress. It is these state and local officials. And so I think, frankly, one of the things that's going to be good for Yangang specifically is that Andrew Yang running for mayor in New York City is going to get a lot more people focused on local politics, where I think we actually have a lot better of a shot of succeeding electorally.
Agreed.
Right. No, I agree that the plan, we're on the same page there. But what I was saying is my fear is that what if the corruption reaches all the way down to the local level and like votes can just get thrown out and there's no accountability, and it turns out the electoral system doesn't really work? What do we do?
Well, the thing is
some
that
people we didn't want got in, and some people we did want got in. That on its own shows that it's not like completely rigged. There's things we can do about it.
Yeah,
we just need to do those things.
This is still the real major culture war push that we have to make people actually love our neighbors enough to say, yeah, even though I don't really know this person, they're worth healthcare, $2,000 a month, giving them a safe community to live in without getting killed by police. I mean, it's just really basic stuff we have to get people to agree on. That's what I think it is. It's not a failure of our electoral mechanisms. It's a failure of our society.
That's a good vector to look at, the culture of valuing your neighbors. Where is the movement towards that? What are we doing now? What are we doing? What is happening to push us in that direction as a society?
No more of these like information gatekeepers who like to polarize people. It's like set me up with somebody who likes Trump, and let me talk about like, yeah, it sucks that these jobs are going away and they're making less money, but the problem of that isn't what you think it is. And it's so liberating to not have some idiot like Hannity or Maddow to just bark on the TV, polarizing you against your fellow countrymen who you probably don't know nothing about, and they're just painting some stupid picture.
On a different note, if you do go into some of those like deep dive Reddits and such, you will find exactly the kinds of people they tell you about. So it's a matter, it's not like the internet is necessarily the right place to push people for information either, if you end up sending them to Reddit boards filled with conspiracy theories. So how do you really mitigate that problem?
You just sift through those people. You don't like it, but there's nothing you can do about them. So getting mad that they exist isn't going to
I would say there's things we can do about that. There are things we can do about creating tiny corners of the internet where extremism breeds, and we have started to, although not effectively. But there are things we can do about that. We can change algorithms to stop processing things and like detrend things that are negative.
Yeah.
But what happens when we are the extremists and we're not allowed to get together and do this anymore because it's considered to be the same as the alt-right by the powers that be?
That's where the line is drawn. That's what I'm saying. How do you really balance that?
Right.
Well, yeah.
What happens when like this is the corner? This is the corner of the internet they would clean up.
But But it's like if you listen to like MSNBC, they're not talking about like doing that or doing. They're just saying, oh, hate these guys and get riled up. But it's like, okay, but that's not
Remember how they painted Wall Street Bets as like, an alt-right fascist thing? Because that's what they'll do to anyone they want to censor. They'll do it to anybody, us, anybody. So I don't really think we should advocate for censoring the dark corners of the internet, because it's going to be us one day.
I'm not advocating for censoring. I'm advocating for de-escalating. There's a completely different sort of process there. I'm not saying people should be shut up. I'm saying maybe we should be more careful about how we promote those things. Maybe we should be trying to push more positive things to the top as opposed to as many negative things. And by positive, I don't necessarily mean just hugs and kisses and everybody happy. I mean like things that create change, things that create solutions, as opposed to just random crap, feel good stories. That kind of thing needs to stop being pushed to the top. Drama needs to be stopped pushing to the top, and we need actual facts and solutions to be the things that get to the top.
Restructuring of our attention economy, though, is what you're talking about.
But I mean, the incentives are in place for just the opposite, though. The incentives are in place to profit by capturing it. Right, and like that's not changing.
It's not, but that's something that people who are in programming can actually change. People who work for places could actually start like surreptitiously planting in better code. You know, at the
But those
moment,
people
we
have the
have a
perverse
society that has designed
incentive
itself
of
to spread negativity 3 times faster.
but those
There are
people
people who are actively, unintentionally doing that. There have to be ways to
Like,
stop that.
they're
I got
incentivized to
an
do it, though,
idea.
is the thing.
Wait,
You know, they're paid more if they get more attention, and it's easier to get more attention with negativity. So those programmers are
the
incentivized to do
protest
the
should
opposite
be,
of what we need them to do. And I agree
you know,
that we need them to do it as a society, Mia, but I don't see how it will happen or can happen because the incentives are all perverse.
I think the protests should be in front of like the news stations themselves. It was funny because like there was a guy who was like organizing a protest in front of like MSNBC and NBC like Universal for Yang, but it never came to fruition. Nothing even happened. The guy got sick, and we didn't organize that well. But I think like it's about time people start demanding better from their news sources. I mean,
Well, people
And the
are.
difference between politics and platforms is people can make new platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't necessarily have to be locked down by what already exists. We can make new things that are better.
Yeah, and you know, in my sense of just trying to manage the information economy, I have just a couple reforms that I'd like to see. Obviously, you're going to have the issue of like we don't have necessarily the reps who might want to push it, which is it's always a problem. But like there are fundamental structural problems that have occurred frankly from deregulation during the late 90s. So like the first thing that I would want to be able to instate is restoring the fairness doctrine, which was repealed in 1996, which allowed the consolidation within the media as well as not having to provide the counterpoint of the arguments that you're putting on air. So that's the first thing. I would like a restoring of the fairness doctrine. The second thing is that I think we should be adjusting our Section 230. This is something that Trump said he wanted to full repeal. I don't go that far, but I do think it should not be including content that is being influenced by algorithm. If you're, amplifying something because you as a platform said that this is engaging content, then you are basically being a publisher, further helping promote that type of content, and you should be, accountable for that. Furthermore, we should be treating data like it is a property right, so that we actually have not just accountability to these people. Like if you're owning it as the network, you have that full accountability. But if you want to push it back to the user who's posting the stuff, you got to have the data be theirs. They have to be the actual owners of it. So that's how you give the accountability. And then finally, you should be implementing a media ombudsman to be able to actually process challenges to the claims. And the way you have people actually adhere to this is you provide a media dollars program paid for by a VAT on advertising. So if you want to have access to users who might be able to spend their money on media, you have to agree to be under the jurisdiction of the ombudsman. Those are how I would want to make the reforms. Obviously, we have to make notice that these things are needed. And the idea of like protesting outside of news stations is a great way to get that message out there.
Do you think they care if we protest? I mean, if it doesn't hurt their bottom line, I'm worried we could just stand out there all day and they'll go, eh.
Things do change. It's just slow and shitty, Shale. I know it sucks, but it's slow, it's shitty, but it does slowly change if people keep saying we need to change it. And keep on and giving actions and, running for office. But we need to keep moving, even if it sucks, even if it seems like we're getting nowhere, because over time we get somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing is you have had some of these protests that do get covered by other networks. I had remembered in the 2019 cycle, there was a protest outside of the CNN buildings. And frankly, the other media networks want to cover that. Your competitor has protests outside their door? Of course I'm going to cover that. It makes them look bad. Sure, it might be calling for general reforms, but if you just put it in a way that makes the media incentivized to want to cover it by saying, oh, it's examples like we protest outside of CNN. Here are all the examples of bad reporting from CNN. And here's the pay structure. And here are some of the quotes from that person. You can use CNN as the example case and then call for the general reforms. And by using CNN as the example case, you're giving meat to the other media groups to attack.
Right. I think we need like an intelligent way of protesting, not like mindless ways of protesting that were just like jumping up, that's just like this raw rage and anger, but just very, very intelligent ways with somebody like reporting on our protests, and we go through the data and the intelligence and the analytics, and we have like hard conversations. If the people we're protesting against decide to like come out and talk, not the kind of protests that are just like, oh, I hate you and I'm just gonna scream and I hate you and thing, and then they can paint it like, look at all these dumbasses, like they have nothing better to do with their lives. There's a way to protest.
Well, you have to be disruptive to protest, or it doesn't work.
Yeah, disruptive in a way, but also like be intelligent about it. Just don't do it in a way that they can just paint you as like lunatics.
Yeah, that's true.
Or
but I mean, they'll always find a way. They'll always find a way.
Yeah, they'll always find a way. But they
you
can't
can be
do
standing
it
around doing nothing, and they'll be like, "Look at those racists."
Yeah,
Right,
but here's the thing, Shale. They can say that, but it's merit of people actually viewing it with their own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why the MLKs of the world embraced, nonviolent protest, because when they saw the images of a very one-way relationship, the media can paint them as radical as they want, but the images show a different tale. And that is important, because right now, the media has been painting these protests that have went around the country for BLM as potentially radical, because only 7% of them have had people breaking windows and such. But that gave them ammo. That gives them video clips. That gives them the negative engagement that they want, that fuels views. And so they can easily paint the whole movement as that. The weakest link usually defines the group. Yeah. It's what the Republicans did all year round. They tried to paint Joe Biden as a socialist because they pointed at certain people in the party and said that is all of them, even though it's not all of them.
And it works.
That is what they do.
Working.
No, it doesn't actually.
No? I mean, they did
paint
Joe Biden
they
as
just
a socialist.
We're not convinced.
And they just lost. They just lost the presidency by millions of votes.
Oh, right.
It didn't work.
Well, okay.
Yep. And it's really coming around more. Like, I watched a recent video from, I believe, the Gravel Institute on running for Congress or local offices as a socialist. It's becoming more and more of a actual boon to call yourself a socialist and stand for socialist principles as a simple political decision. Even a decade ago, being called a socialist was an attack word. Like, you couldn't actually run as a socialist in America, but now it's a real thing. Like, that is the change that we're talking about happening. It's slow, it's painful, but it's measured in decades, not months. And Yang really shortened that time frame. Like, seriously shortened it. He put basic income in everyone's mouths right as the greatest catastrophe in our lives happened.
I didn't think we would ever be as close as we are to people accepting the ideas that we've been talking about in my lifetime before that campaign. Like, I really thought that was something that, like, the mass majority of Americans wouldn't even hear about until, like, 2050, when we invented a freaking replicator or something. And, they would bury that idea so deep that it wouldn't even be worth advocating for, because it would never, ever rise to the point where average people were talking about it.
Yeah.
But
and
how much...
here's the crazy thing of data I had recently read. So a Siena poll came out on February 16th, 4 days ago, basically breaking down the different parts of Joe Biden's stimulus plan. And when you looked at the economic initiatives, 83% supported the direct stimulus check, the most popular economic initiative. It was the most popular overall initiative in the plan, even more than the vaccine distribution among independents, too. So this compared to before Andrew Yang's run, it was 25%. But here's the thing. We had nobody even supporting the idea before. We now have 50 congressional people in the House who are backing recurring checks. We have had multiple mayors around the country start up basic income pilot programs. This has been building momentum. Momentum usually comes from the local level, and then it floods and crashes down on DC. Just like gay marriage did on a local level, that is how movements form. And that's why we need to focus people down ballot.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. I get that it's frustrating to us because we're putting in so much more effort than we're seeing back as people involved on the forefront. But to the people who are outside of this, the people who are suddenly going to start receiving those $1,000 checks or $2,000 checks or whatever we end up finally getting when we do push through, it's going to seem like it happened overnight because they're not involved in this. They have no goddamn idea that people have been fighting as hard as we've been fighting to get this. They're just sitting there, and one day they're going to start getting money and they're going to be like, wow, who are the amazing people who made this happen? And you're going to be able to claim that.
It's going to be like when the stimulus checks first came around and all the Republicans were like, I guess this is what liberals feel like all the time, when they don't even understand how hard of a battle it was to get you that cash relief, like, because of a disaster. It was a struggle, and I'm amazed we got it the first time around.
And we got it again. Like, I know we didn't get as much as we'd like, but we did get the 600. And
well, some of us.
It wasn't yeah, that's true. I'm not one of the people who got the 600 myself, and that is unfortunately due to means testing and how they administered it based on 2019 taxes. But still, the fact that we were able to get a check not just once, but twice for some people is impressive. And that we're talking about it still a third time. We got to still get it. But the idea that we're getting checks multiple times is a truly new age. I know it's happened in the past. Technically,
it hasn't happened.
Like George W. Bush has given us a rebate, but like to have it multiple times and that be like the most popular part of a stimulus proposal is a big deal.
It's kind of like
it hasn't happened during Joe Biden's reign. Only Joe Biden has not allowed a check to go out yet, and he may not allow one to.
I don't know if allowed is the right word for that, though, either. I mean, it's not like he's gotten a bill passed to him he could sign.
Well, it's more than that. He's advocated for both reducing and increasing the limit at which checks go out to people. So he's not really pushing for it either. He's just giving political tidbits.
I think what it is right now, it's kind of like, you know, when the holes in the dam start like breaking and someone tries to put their fingers in it and then there's another water that comes out. I think the people who are really trying to stop the UBI idea are those people just putting their fingers in the holes, but the dam has to,
there will always be a Joe Manchin.
Yeah, exactly.
After Joe Manchin, there's another Joe Manchin. There will always be someone in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to stop anything good from happening.
Well, I mean,
appreciate that.
I find ironic. Joe Manchin is Ojeda's friend. So, John, when you have Ojeda on the program,
we already talked. We already talked. It's been already recorded in the past. But to your point about the Manchins of the world being our roadblocks, well, the best way to stop them from being our roadblocks is build up the majority. If we only have 50 people in the Senate, it only takes one person to kill it. If you have 60 people, it's now going to take 10. You can actually overcome the filibuster. So you have to start growing this so you don't have to rely on the Manchins.
All the better if there are people, too. Because if they're our people, then we're not relying on neolibs. We're relying on people that have been endorsed by, say, Humanity Forward or Income Movement or People's Basics.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I would like to say on that is one of the people we had endorsed, Paula Jean Swearingen, during the 2020 cycle. She was a U.S. Senate candidate for West Virginia. We got to have her on our program. She basically got zero assistance from the DSCC. They basically put no support behind her because, well, she's progressive and in a red area. Same thing happened to Marquita Bradshaw in Tennessee. The thing is, the Democratic Party isn't supporting these people. And a lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of the progressive movement just doesn't focus on that. Like, they gave up after the presidential cycle and they're not as engaged on the congressional cycle because it doesn't get as much federal media attention. And I'll tell you this, like all the pundits that are out there, like the main pundits, like the Jimmy Dores, the Kyle Kalinskis, the TYTs, the whatever, they don't cover congressional races nearly enough. People don't focus on that. They focus on just the federal politics of what's happening in DC legislative-wise. They focus on some foreign politics. They focus on the presidential race. And that's basically it. And I thought that was bad. I think we need to have more focus down ballot so that we can start growing our ranks so that we can get some of those people supported. Because Boy, could you imagine? West Virginia could have been a big win for us. There is so many issues in West Virginia that the policy platforms Paula Jean Swearengin was running on are good, but she got no help.
Like, look at this in the 2020 cycle. All of these like great people we had running got beat out by like the Trump, super red, super MAGA crowd. But now that Trump is gone, I think we're gonna have a real shot, at getting some of those. Like if Blair Walsingham ran again, and like some of these other people in these Republican areas, and they're running against like very, very like super kind of like too Democrat, I think he can hit somewhere in the middle and we can pick up some of those seats.
I really don't think that it's getting more candidates to run in these red states. I think, like John was saying, it's the support. West Virginia is very rural, and it has a lot of poverty problems. If the Democrats in the Senate had actually recognized what another Senate seat would be from West Virginia, they could easily have given her the funding and attention to actually activate that area. It's really the support that we need to change the perspective on. We need to weaken the establishment by the electoralism, really, by changing people's minds.
Attention economy problem again, too, right? Because we need eyeballs on people who don't get attention otherwise. And it's kind of something Ariel talks about a lot as well. Like the people who need the help are the ones not getting the help. And the people who don't need the help so much, people running for president or running for fancy districts with big names that are going to get funding from all around the country, are the ones getting all the advertisement, all the grassroots support, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's a classic Amy McGrath thing. Throw $100 million at a race to try and go at Mitch McConnell. Like, here's the thing. Like, we have to be a lot smarter in who we try to flip. A lot of the times, this is what's told to people, like in the states of Kentucky, because I got to talk very extensively with like the Bruyere campaign during the primary. Basically, the big thing they worry about is the way Congress works today. Most of the power just comes from simple experience. How long have you been there? And so by knocking McConnell off, you have to go back to the beginning of the line, is what a lot of people are told in Kentucky. And so we have to stop trying to throw all our money at the most senior people and start taking off their freaking newbies. Take off the people who haven't built up this war chest of experience and money and influence and relationships. Those are who we have to target. And I think the point before that was made about potentially the Trump being down being a way to be able to flip more red states. I think it largely depends about, frankly, does the Republican Party divide continue to fester? It seems like it will be. It just depends on whether it's a full split or not. Because if it is, then we're going to be in a great spot.
I don't think it's a split. I think we're in a shift. We're going to see a lot more Republicans join the Blue Dog Caucus and the Republican Party just wither.
Well, and I think this is an opportunity, though.
Oh, go ahead, Kai. No, you haven't got a chance to talk, and you were interrupted once earlier. Please, go ahead.
That's okay. This is where I kind of think we have this interesting opportunity, if we're really smart with strategy, that we can focus on those what I would call dead seat reps. So they maybe don't serve on too many committees, but they've maybe been there a really long time. But what's most important is that they're never primaried. And that's where we can just focus on primarying the shit out of those people by running 4 different UBI candidates, red and blue, in those districts, right? And that elevates the conversation. And then you see how it shakes out in the poll to kind of see which strategy worked best for this district. And can I replicate that in the next election cycle if we're really going to be pushing for years and years? But I don't think we have that much time. And that's the part where I get super frustrated is
I know
we don't have 4 fucking years or 6 more years to hope that the Senate changes. What is this world going to look like in 6 more years? How many millions of people are going to die because they can't get a vaccine, because they can't get medical treatment, because they can't afford to pay their goddamn $10,000 light bill because there was fucking Arctic weather in Texas? And if we don't like get our heads straight, none of it matters, because the world will be in such disarray. We won't be able to organize for anything. And this is where I agree with Shale. I think electoralism is dead. I think we need to get this in the hands of our Better Business bureaus and our chambers of commerce and our mayor's offices and say, make it happen. Just make it happen. The money is ours. It belongs to us. Make it happen. Because if we don't do something, we won't survive.
The big problem is there's not enough people motivated like us for that strategy to work. The slow and steady one, at least, there's progress on it, slowly but steadily. It is too late. It is all too late.
I mean, the one thing I'd like to add, Maya, to what you're saying there is, like, you have to have the person in place to actually have the outside force have influence. Do you think the civil rights movement is going to have the success it does if LBJ is not in office to be receptive to the cause? I don't think so. And the other point that Kai made that I think is interesting and well worth exploring is, yeah, you do need to support potentially the people who support our policies in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Like, frankly, so many people are not policy-based voters. They are people who just vote on a label, purely. And so people need to understand that sometimes you have to talk to people in the way they need to be, like, talked to. And sometimes it just means embracing an R logo and changing the Republican Party with new policies. Like, Trump was not the mainstay Republican politician. He kind of just talked to the issues of the base, but he had the R label and he was able to win. So I think like some people like Brian Matlock, who we interviewed on our program, who was like a socialist who ran in a Republican area, is a good example. I wouldn't do as he did, which is run as a Republican socialist, because the socialist word's going to then scare people. But the idea of running as a progressive, as a Republican in very deep red areas makes sense to me.
It really does.
I really like the idea that you had of running multiple people on the same cause from our cause on the ticket. So, like, we'd actually technically be like interviewing all of them amongst our different, podcasts and such. And we'd be amplifying all of them, but still winning in the end, no matter what, with that. I love that. And then we just drown out the person who's not. So that I thought was a really great idea, Kai.
Well, it depends on the race there, because like John was saying initially, some of our failings is because we're spread too thin. So overwhelming with numbers can help in some cases, but like I think it was really shown in this last presidential primary that having like 20 plus candidates is a really unfocused race.
Oh no, I think she was talking about in specifically already weak states where the people were already like you were talking specifically about incumbents who never even get primaried. So
yes.
That's worry about a funding mechanism.
That is the exact situation where you can run multiple candidates in a low-cost way.
Yes, that's kind of the point that I'm making, because we've got a whole Bible Belt that's, I think, probably pretty easily infiltrated, to use a loaded word. And I don't necessarily mean it in a bad way, but I mean like in a populist way. We're promoting something that is very bipartisan. And it's one of the reasons why I love UBI so much. It's like, it benefits everybody. It hurts no one except for the people who are afraid of changing how this system is working for them.
Yeah, it hurts the people who rely on exploiting the desperate. And those are the people who make the rules. Those are the people who run the Southern strategy, who, I don't think that's the problem. You can try to go influence the Bible Belt. You go talk to the people who run the churches, and they're going to go, well, we get a lot of money and support from these corporate masters of ours, so I don't think I'm going to advocate for a UBI, thank you. They give me more money than you. And that's how it's going to go.
Well, that depends. I mean, if the person that you get to run is like a Reverend Wendy type, then you've got somebody in the church community running right out the gate. So it depends on who you run. You can be strategic about who you decide to run too. You don't have to just be strategic about where you run. You can pick people who are more likely to have the kind of influence or have the right kind of style for that area.
Yeah. But then like the corrupt pastors will go, oh, that Reverend Wendy, she's this, that, and the other thing. They'll make up a bunch of bad things about her. And the people who just pay attention to the extant power structure will go, oh, yes, we'll continue this.
Yeah, it's difficult, but you sometimes succeed. You can't succeed if you don't try.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true. It just doesn't seem to succeed very much. And it's pretty disheartening.
It doesn't need
certainly is
every time to slowly shape it. That, like you guys said, the problem is that we do not have a lot of time. So there's not really a good strategy here. That's the honest truth. The honest truth is there is no good strategy for immediate change. There's no good strategy for long-term change either, because we're not going to get exactly what we want out of it. It's all going to be compromised. So there's no good path.
Yeah, and frankly, when you're working with some Republicans it's kind of like a hostage negotiation, and they don't care if the hostages die, you lose a lot of leverage. It is a difficult situation when you are working with bad faith actors who do not care. They just care about the power. But that's why I think you're right. You have to be focused on, is this a good candidate? You have to be also, like, there are multiple people who just run as freaking vanity things, and they consolidate lanes and make it harder for people to get focus. You gotta drop out at some point. Like, I know people hate it, pressuring people of dropping out, but like, take it on yourself to own, like, is the point to cause positive change or to get you a political career? I know myself, I ran for Congress. I ran in New Jersey's 8th district back in 2019 for the 2020 cycle. I dropped out because I knew I wasn't the better candidate for the cycle, and we needed to replace the incumbent. And I endorsed the person who I thought was the better candidate in the race. It was early on in my campaign, and I did it because it matters in terms of resources, in terms of attention, in terms of volunteers. There's so much that happens when you have a spread field that makes the grassroots weaker. And so you have to understand that you have to come together and unite to have a unified front. I always wonder what would have happened if after the Nevada win for Bernie Sanders, if he went and frickin' did relationship management and got more endorsements to continue the momentum. I have no idea, but he is not that person. And that is why he failed. Because it's my way or the highway, and we need to be able to work on building relationships.
I think what would have happened is more cheating. Enough cheating to make it not have mattered.
Now, I'm also in the same camp of wondering if Yang had done New Hampshire instead of Iowa, if he would have been the comeback kid instead of Biden that night. But, you know, it is as it is. Our leaders are here, and we just have to force them to do better. Like, we can go and get personal and protest their homes, their businesses, make them not have a wink of sleep and drive them to exhaustion.
Good idea.
We can do this. It's not that difficult.
But thank you. That's where I'm like, general strike, that we haven't done that yet. We really haven't.
I mean, that would also be a good idea. You need to do both sides. Like, I'm not saying that we don't have to do non-electoral organizing either. Like doing mutual aid, organizing general strikes. These things are 100% necessary to actually make the demand. But we also just need the people who are on the inside, who are receptive ears to the protest.
And on our own side, we need to get people who have less of an ego. We have to get people who make it more about policies and helping people rather than, look at me, I'm so great and I'm never going to compromise, and like I just want all the attention, and like, you know, because that really hurts the cause.
Yeah, we need political change instead of political careers.
I'm so tired of saying we have to do this. Like, we all know what we have to do, but if there's no way to do it, why do we even bring up what we have to do?
Because we're hoping that other people will hear us saying it and decide, yes, this does have to happen. And then pick up a torch and move and get more people to say, yes, this has to happen.
Especially the more abstract things, like we need candidates with smaller egos. That's hard to measure, right? This has to happen. You know, and we've got zero power to make it happen. And we're just like, gotta happen. Well, it sucks.
And this is where I'll speak up from the organizing experience that I had with the Green Party, which is that there's a lot we can do. We can train people how to be better at running for office. Like, some of it's marketing, some of it's salesmanship. If you've never been a salesperson, how do you know how to sell yourself? Like, if you can't sell somebody who doesn't know what time it is a watch, how do we expect them to sell their political agenda?
I have trouble selling myself on my bio on Twitter. So yeah.
So then this is where I say that grassroots organizing becomes your most important tool, where so then you have boot camps for candidates. Do you want to be a candidate? Come to our seminar, come to our Zoom conference, participate in these ways. And so I think that would be easy. Even us through this podcast can and have started doing that in our document section, are building ways that we can help each other be better at promoting our agenda.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is kind of it's interesting. It's like we have this dynamic of just like candidates who are inexperienced running for the first time, and there's this trend for a lot of people to have the first thing they run for be Congress. I fell victim to this myself. I did that as the first thing. I backed out, but I've been learning more and more of like where we need to be directing kind of our attention. You want to have these more experienced candidates running for the federal office, which are these more high-profile races. They've already had these relationship networks built up. If you're a first-time person running for politics, run locally. Like, it's a lot easier. You have to sway way less people. You need to raise way less money. Run locally. You start building up relationship networks. A lot of people need to have that humility of saying, yeah, there's a reason why most people come up the ranks, especially if you're going to run as a Democrat. Democrats care way more about political experience than Republicans do. There's a ton of polling showing this. And so if you are a Democrat, a progressive, anyone else, run locally. Get some experience first. We got a lot of yanggang successes that way, particularly. Like, think of the Jermaine Johnsons. So it doesn't have to be necessarily local. It could be a state office, like state assembly as well. But the first step being federal for a lot of people ends up being a lot of wasted time and resources. It gets your name out, and if you decide to run again because you ran a good race, like, for instance, I expect Adam Christensen's going to run again. I think David Kim's going to run again. I think Alex Morse is going to run again. I think those are people worth potentially supporting. But yeah, a lot of people need to be willing to run locally first.
Yeah, I will say, though, there are a handful of issues like basic income that local municipalities can't truly affect. So you do also have to think about your issues and what position you want. Like, if you're in one of those Republican states, running as a Republican for Congress for the first time would actually be a really good strategy if you're a basic income advocate.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I mean, go ahead.
No, John, go ahead.
No, I basically finished. I was just saying I generally agree. If you're going to run as a newbie for a federal office, you're probably more likely to win as a Republican, and frankly, that's going to create the biggest shift. Like a flip of a red district to a progressive, even if it is still technically a Republican, that would be a big deal.
So, when I was living in Missouri, and now I live in Indiana, so I kind of feel like I traded one handful of problems with another handful of problems between how the states are different from each other and how they're similar. But when I was living in Missouri, and then after Josh Hawley did all of his nonsense, I was like, well, I could run for Senate. I could run against Blunt. He's a waste of time. And I would do it on the Republican side. And I'd sell myself as a pretty classical conservative, which is that our government is wasteful. It doesn't do the things that it needs to do. Look at our infrastructure. These are important for commerce, and et cetera, et cetera. And then UBI is the kicker. And in Missouri, that would work. And I think it would probably work here in Indiana too. Simply because these are states that are mostly working agrarian-based states, where you have people living in just dire poverty, out in the hills, disconnected from even regular media, some of those towns still don't get cable. We're not talking even super connected people, but they vote red every time. So then the question is, are any of those districts available to be primaried? And then it's about raising the message and getting it on even the Republican Party's radar that no. If your party's going to survive, you better start looking at UBI and some other things that you've pushed hard to stop, or you're not going to have a base left because they're all going to be dead.
Yeah. I mean, it really, I do think that the GOP is going the way of the Whig, the way of the Federalists, the way of all the other parties that we've lost to history. They've just done an unacceptable political act, and the magic R isn't going to save them this time.
Eric joined us. So hi.
Yes, hello. Yes, I just got my headset working, so now I can hear you.
It's good to get to talk to you for the first time. I think that we have only ever talked through group chat and Twitter before. Nice to.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Nice seeing you.
You are running for Congress, right?
I am for Connecticut's 3rd District against Rosa DeLauro.
Hey. Glad to see another congressional candidate.
Yes, sir. I am going against the House Appropriations Chair, so she can raise unlimited money. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's one hell of a run to go against. I mean, at least I'm going against someone who's joining because of a special election that Deb is leaving from. So, at least I have a bit of an easy time.
I mean, I'm running against a 30-plus year incumbent, and I will be the first person to ever primary her.
Hey,
her entire time.
Hey, that is a great way to start there.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have a website, right?
Yes, I do.
All right, cool. I think I have it written down. I just need to get it linked up on my site.
Do you want to say it here since you're on air?
Sure. It's just erikstorson.com. That is ERIKSTORESUND.com. I haven't really put it too much out there because I can't yet accept donations because, well, there's some obstacles in that.
Oh, yeah? Have you checked out Act Blue?
Yes. Well, you can't do Act Blue until you formally file, and you can't formally file until you have a treasurer, and I can't seem to find a treasurer.
Well, you can be a self-treasurer until you find someone, It's not...
I can't open a bank account without having someone else as a treasurer.
Oh, then that's your bank, because my bank totally accepted me as my own treasurer until I find someone, because it's still really early.
I've contacted 3 different banks. They all say the same thing, that you need someone else as the treasurer for them to open the account. So they need proof on the FEC Form 1 that someone else is the treasurer.
Dang, Connecticut is strict.
Yep.
So with that in mind, everybody, you heard it here. He needs a treasurer if anybody is in Connecticut and could be a treasurer.
I don't know that you have to be in Connecticut. I mean, my first volunteer treasurer, she was out of California, but she kind of had something come up, and that's why I no longer have one.
Okay, so anybody can be treasurer. If anybody
I believe so, but you will be legally responsible for all the money of the campaign. So if you are not good with money or accounting, I would highly suggest you not do it.
So this brings up a good point, though, that people wanting to run need assistance in finding these kind of people. So I think, within the Yanggang network, or any network really, we should find ways to help link up people who have the right skill sets to the people who need it, who are trying to run for UBI, and streamline the process so that we have a higher chance of success, right?
I agree. I personally have reached out to the Yanggang on Twitter. I put out a couple calls. Some people rebroadcast it. No one actually has come up as a treasurer. I've reached out to about 30 local CPAs, and none of them offer treasurer as a service.
John, you have any advice? I'm sorry, I thought you were done. There was a pause. Too eager.
Oh no! Now I'm reaching out to the Green Party, seeing if they would be willing to spare a treasurer or put me in contact with someone, because we do align. I align very strongly with the Green Party, even though I'm not running as Green.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it's a viable strategy. I just wondered, John, you're a savvy guy. You're a guest. You've been quiet for a minute. I wondered, do you have any advice on this issue?
Unfortunately, I don't have a ton because it's a specific personnel question. Eric has previously reached out to me about this topic, so I was unfortunately unable to help him. But if I hear of anyone, I will be sending him his way.
That's great.
Yeah, I apologize, Eric. I don't have anyone for you.
I wish I could.
The bigger issue is that you guys are in touch. It's fantastic. Which is, if there is to be success, it is through coordination and collaboration.
Yes,
so very good to hear.
I've been in touch with not only John. I'm just now meeting you, Sheridan. So I haven't. I followed you on Twitter, but I haven't really done much.
Same. I'm in a similar boat as you. I'm just starting out with my campaign, and I have a website up, which I hope is helpful. And I'm connected with Act Blue because New Mexico is a lot looser with their financial regulation. And I have a list of a bunch of other basic income candidates, and I want to add you to that. So that's
sure.
If anyone is interested in that list, it's lund2022.com/basic income candidates with dashes as spaces.
And I'll just remind everybody, go ahead and drop those links into our live streamed chat channel, please.
So I'm gonna say I've noticed pardon me. I've noticed a simple transition with this podcast a little bit. We went from talking about politics to how to train politicians and getting them connected to resources. We've kind of evolved towards all right, this is the team that is going to teach each other how to do these things because you don't know anything, and you know what? Let's get some people on who do. And there we go. Okay, you guys talk. Are you guys going to figure it out? All right.
It's kind of a virtual, it's a virtual public house for aspiring revolutionaries.
It's kind of beautiful.
It changes. It is what it needs to be. It's a Discord where basic income advocates come to support each other, to collude, to collaborate, and that can take several forms.
And I mean, hey, people get tired of talking about problems all the time. Sometimes we want to just start talking about the solutions. And then we know the solutions policy-wise. So then you're like, oh, the new problem is how you get it done. And so now we get to talk about, again, solutions to how you get it done. Tactics is such an important thing. And I feel like it does not get nearly the bandwidth that it needs to in political senses. Mainly just outrage. Sometimes you get some policy talk. But tactics is a much needed conversation within the progressive movement of how do you actually make change.
So how could we optimize using a channel like this one towards, I guess, what the next phase is for what's going on here?
I mean, I think it's happening, and it's that if this is a place where candidates know they can go to get in touch with their candidates, cut through any red tape, find someone that might be able to help them and get resources very easily in an informal and even joyful way, I think that would be a good progression for our Discord server and podcast.
Yeah, and I would say one other thing that's important, it might sound almost stupid, but it's important. You got to make entertaining content. You can help more when you have a larger platform. It's unfortunate, which is why I try to make appeals to the people who already do have large platforms to be a little bit more responsible with them. But I mean, that's the whole reason why we went through our own changes. It's partially because we felt like, we feel like we're helping tactically and making these relationships and helping candidates. But it's like, if you're not making something that can grow to a larger audience, you're not helping the candidates as much as you potentially could. And so that is something that we're also trying to do, is just offer more content offerings, make it in a more brand accessible manner, and just constantly improve quality instead of just constantly doing more, just focus on doing stuff well. But yeah, that's my general advice. The bigger the platform you have, the more you can help.
I would like to explore this. This is a good idea. What constitutes doing content well, for lack of better words? What that's what kind of content should we be making, John? What kind of, all of us, everybody, all of our channels.
People are going to have to take this with a major grain of salt, because it's not like I'm completely made it. Like, I mean, I'm still figuring it out as I go.
Yeah.
But I mean, frankly, we made this point beforehand that, frankly, some negativity is engaging. And I'm not saying that you have to be negative, but like to add a little bit of like almost drama to things. Like,
Ariel.
people like a narrative. Yeah. Like they want to tune in to something because they have heroes and villains and drama. It's a great story.
Since Shale mentioned my name, I just want to say, like, yesterday at 6 p.m., I don't know how many of you have saw it. It was a first episode of actual Ariel the Avalanche, and I just like laid into political tribalism. So please go and check that out, Revolutionary Thinking. And just tell us what you think, because I really like went all in, and I tried to make it in a way that really is gonna rile people up and jump up and down, but for the right reasons and not for the wrong ones. I'm really hoping, because that kind of gets people, and I really did try to paint like pictures of villains and like do stuff like that. So
is that content? Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I do have to jump over to Leyline right now.
Okay,
but
well, I'm glad you got
going
to say hi.
Hear the rest of this stuff back on YouTube. So I'm just going to sign out really quick. Ariels on Twitter and Instagram, and please come check out my Ariel the Avalanche stuff on Revolutionary Thinking on YouTube. I just uploaded my first episode.
Hey Ariel, before you go, quick question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be in LA today. Can I swing by and hang out?
Oh, awesome.
I'll see.
What
time?
Busy.
I want to see pictures of you guys together.
Like 3 hours.
Ariel, you got to make it happen. You got to prioritize this.
Yes, we need to prove that you both exist.
A little less than a week, so. I mean, I would love to actually like meet up with Jeremy from Leyline too. So
Hell yeah.
I mean, like, I want to do work while I'm there too.
Yeah, he's in Orange County though.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm a nomad. It doesn't matter to me.
Right.
Anyway, we could text. Bye.
Yeah, let's text.
Bye.
Bye, Ariel.
So we're on a good topic here, like this, Jen. This content, you've got a good inclination, a good instinct to draw eyes to the channel, to go for the stuff that's accessible. Here's the thing. If the people tune in for that content, they give that their attention, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be paying attention to the drier content, which we consider to be the valuable content. So you might think it's a Trojan horse, but it might actually not be doing what you want. People might just be tuning in for the trash content, and not that it's trash, but the less empowering, less important content. If all they tune in for is the negatively framed stuff, that's a problem. And I don't know that that's not how the world currently is, because the metrics to measure it aren't there.
Yeah, so I understand where your kind of concern is. So the first is that you don't want to produce garbage content. So that's like first. When you're making something more dramatic or entertaining in terms of your content, making sure there are defined characters within it and a plot, kind of, don't like do stuff poorly. Don't be like excessively divisive for the sake of just drawing views. Like, make something that's actually educational and you feel proud on that sense too. But the second thing is, it's a funnel. Like, frankly, this is kind of like the bait, but I'm going to get some people converted to the other content too. And that's more than I might have gotten otherwise. And so if that's just going to increase the amount of people who see the dry content because I made some other less dry content, I think that's going to be a good thing. And furthermore, to expand on that, one of the things I started, frankly, this week, not like in a super professional way, but I wanted to start something new, is just I created a whole new account for purely non-politics.
Nice.
Because I think certainly there are going to be certain people who will be attracted to me because of my politics, but I want people who might want to just listen to me regardless of politics. And if they like me and trust me there, they might convert and then start hearing some of my politics and be receptive. I think generally you need something that kind of casts a big net at first and then allows it to be funneled down into the important stuff. That's generally my approach on how I see content. You gotta first be able to get someone in the door before you can sell them on more content. It's the basic rule of selling is you sell them on one thing and then the add-ons come. So this is the basic model of so many products, and it is the media as well.
I just hate markets. I just hate the market. It's a bad distribution mechanism. I think we could do better. Markets are just terrible. I hate the attention market, attention economy, and I hate having to work towards to work with a market system in mind. It just perverts and degrades any content that I want to make.
How would you prefer the ecosystem? Do you just want state-run media?
I just want everything to be fundamentally different. Star Trek. Let's have Star Trek. I'd like Star Trek.
It's like, I agree, but there's a reason it's a fictional show. Like, you have to work within the reality of, like, some systems are actually good in markets. Like, there are actual fundamental indicators of which services are better socialized and which services are better capitalized.
I don't believe
it's basically, is it an excludable good? That's one. And then two, is it price inelastic or price elastic? That's it.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Common resource goods, public goods, those are things to socialize. But if it's a good that could be potentially excludable and it is price elastic, leave that to the markets. That is the most efficient place for it. Regulated, obviously, but
right.
And this is where I say this is the voice of what I would consider a classical conservative. It's not about
like
being
Goldwater.
Contrary to everybody. It's doing what's pragmatic and effective. It's understanding that some things can't be properly done in an open market, in a competitive market. Some things must be pooled because of the nature of what those things are and how they function. And I think this is where economics education needs to be something other than just monetary theory, because that's mostly what's taught anymore.
Yeah.
But economics is so much broader than monetary theory. Money is just one portion of what makes up human economy. And economy is at its root about our time, not about our wage. And that is the fundamental mistake that every single one of us makes, that we start breaking through the ice with the UBI.
Professor Richard Wolff, who I'm a big fan of, does a lot on how narrow our academic view of economics is, how ludicrously narrow and just untenable our academic construction of finances in this country, and how we're just not shown anything except this single free market sort of capitalism thing. No alternatives are ever really realistically explored in most universities even.
I'll just say, as someone who is an econ major, we were taught that. We were taught beyond the free market models. Just putting it out there, because
that's good.
A lot of people don't end up taking.
Do you watch Richard Wolff? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Okay, so you know the content I'm talking about.
Yeah, I am aware. I like some of Richard Wolff. I think some stuff he says is a little erroneous, especially with how he does labor surplus. But I like him in general. I do just have some disagreements with him.
What do you think is erroneous
about his labor surplus theory? He doesn't factor in any risk management of your capital of the investment. Like, basically, there are raw materials. Mm-hmm. And if you're just going to say that someone should just get back equal to that, you're not factoring in any of the risk of potential consumption of the resource that should be compensated. He just doesn't factor in anything around overhead and the additional cost that businesses have to fund, which is the reason why you have extraction of that surplus value. And furthermore, even in a socialist economy, you're still going to have to do a valuation of labor value and provide compensation. It's not like that magically goes away. It's like, what is someone's fair value? It's always going to be a judgment by the person themselves and what they demand and what the employer is willing to give. That happens in socialism. That happens in capitalism. And he fundamentally just doesn't understand that. He thinks that suddenly that you're going to have automatically fair set wages under socialism. No, what's going to happen is you're going to have the surrounding employees making determinations on them. And they might be better, and he can make that point, but he doesn't make that point. He basically says it goes away. And so that's my problem with what Richard Wolff does in his analysis of labor surplus.
That's fair. Yeah.
And
good answer.
And ultimately, and this is what I really liked about Yang's work, and the way that he shaped this fourth industrial revolution and what it really means in terms of now our labor value, the human labor value, is shifting dramatically because so much of the things that we've spent our time earning a wage doing are going to be automated away, and machines aren't really an infinite resource, but they function in the labor market more like an infinite resource. And the things like the overhead and those other market issues start only working for the benefit of the corporation and only hurt the worker that's dependent on wage labor for their survival. So, this is a perfect opportunity for us to once again take a look at the way that we've structured our country's economics and make improvements so that more people can benefit from the benefits of automation, the benefits of industrialization, the benefits of the assembly line. We only did moderate market corrections for those things. And then in the 80s and 90s, under Bush, Reagan, to some extent Carter, and Clinton, got just wiped off the map, were some of those economic stability things that were instituted as an attempt to correct some of these errors that have been made historically, in the finance and economic sectors of how do we manage 700 million people.
All right, we got dead air. Wow, long pause. Nobody's got. All right. Well, shucks. We were talking about electoralism and its limits and the alternatives thereof. John, I would love to hear more of your thoughts on non-electoral organizing, as I know you're very savvy overall,
Sure.
and you haven't talked about that too much. So,
yeah. So, I mean, to the points that have been made before about the slowness of our politics and how it is a gradual change, there is still pain in the interim, and we are seeing this very clearly with the winter crisis that's happening across the South, particularly in Texas. One of the things that we need to be doing is supporting people. That's just fundamentally a job that we have to do beyond government itself. We think that certain things are better support systems provided through government, but until those things are established, we have to take charge and do it. So mutual aid is the first thing. Making sure that you are making care for those that are vulnerable communities, making sure that you're providing the resources, whether that's food or masks and PPE for the elderly, making sure that people's needs are being met via volunteer activity is that first thing, supporting people. The second thing is we actually do need protests. They are effective ways of getting a message out. They have to actually have a form of centralized leadership so that you have messaging control, as well as someone who can be a lead negotiator with the group you are trying to petition to make change, who is coming into the room. If you have a mass movement of just a bunch of people showing up, who do you go negotiate with if you're ready to meet with terms? You don't know. You need a centralized leadership structure so that if people around the country are looking for a message of what is the specific demands to this movement, they have a person to go to.
Let's talk about central leadership for a second. I just want to brainstorm with you for a second. In the past, central leadership for progressives tended to come out of the labor movement, right? It was mostly, in the recent American past, it's been labor. But now most of us have never been many of us have never been a part of labor in a meaningful way, and most of us have never been in a union. So that can't be the avenue through which leadership arises. And it seems like that was kind of a failing of a lot of the Bernie supporters in the past, this focus on labor and the idea that a labor leader could lead non-labor progressives. So what is the new leader going to come out of? What can really unite this big tent? I don't know.
Yeah, so that is certainly a tough question. So I'm not going to say that it's like someone just gets picked. It does come from the grassroots, where basically it kind of starts a little bit decentralized and you have these different factions kind of building up. But then there is basically a culmination of these different groups that have to kind of come together and create leadership structure to like work together. And so usually it's like, hey, which areas have seen like the most success in building up a movement? And those people generally get more of the influence in being the leadership. And I think we have to embrace a couple groups that the progressive movement has not traditionally done well with. We have to be embracing religious communities who have very big centralized network and clear leadership structures of how to get the message out. You also have to be, frankly, embracing a lot of the upper middle class. They are people who generally have more resources to spend on organizing, as well as more time. Particularly women tend to be the people who put the most time into actual volunteer work. So I think those are some of the things that we have to focus on, is reaching out to communities who we generally are not particularly great with, and then having these decentralized movements actually try to reach out to other groups outside of their community and form an actual legitimized national network of leadership with centralized control of who is the person making the demand. Obviously, you're going to have many people talking and advocating in their area, because a localized approach of having someone from your area talk to the area is going to be more effective than some national figure just coming in. But you do need a chain of command, and you do need messaging discipline, and you do need to have some level of control. So that's just a fundamental way of how most movements succeed. They have key figures who are the main stakeholders to have messaging control, and the media can very clearly then start amplifying a specific message and specific demands.
Well thought out answer, and but we're just missing the specifics. It's troubling.
Well, but I think Yang has tapped into many of the things that John just talked about.
He tried.
Well, no, he's continuing to do it though, with MLK the Third being involved with his campaign still to this day. So I think that shows this ability definitely to reach out to those communities and amplify what we're doing.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is kind of cool, and I had mentioned this beforehand, it's like you don't stop. You have to just keep pushing. And the second time candidates are going to likely have more success than the first time. Yang is able to continue the movement that he built and move it into a localized sense. And I think it is hard. Like, there's a reason why movements are notable in history. It's because a lot of movements, frankly, fail. Like, you don't have those always reported. Most movements end up failing. It's just the case. It's like a startup, frankly. Most startups fail. But you have to keep pushing. You make attempts and some succeed. And usually the success comes from like A, innovation. B, it's usually like effort level. And then C, it's usually like what relationship network do you have to be able to tap into? And then like D, it usually comes from establishing a more mature process along the way to build up efficiencies and to reduce risk. That's how movements build. Movements are essentially the same thing as any other business or nonprofit. It's a little bit more decentralized potentially, but it has very similar elements. You still have to sell it. You still have to build something. You still have to manage people within it. It's a very similar nature.
Well, and I think that a current example of that being true, John, is the cannabis movement. I remember when I graduated high school, it wasn't legal anywhere in the United States. And now it's legal almost everywhere in one way or another. And in those last remaining states, you know, there's a bill already been introduced in the House and has passed the House to decriminalize it and take it off of Schedule 1. So
marijuana is definitely a good display of action being, you know, decades of building, people who were activists, and then suddenly just one day, there it is.
Yeah, like you were saying, from the outside, it seems like it happened overnight, you know. And from the inside, it seems like it will never happen.
Yeah. And I want to give one reference to like the basic income movement, particularly is, you know, you talk to some folks like, for instance, like the Scott Santons of the world, who are the prominent voices. They've been doing this for years, and they were way less optimistic about its prospect 10 years ago. And we're all feeling frustrated, like, you know, oh, it's not happening soon enough. And we're not wrong in that, but like, you kind of have to see it in the grand scheme of things. Like the people back then felt that same thing, like we need it now. And well, it takes time. And they're like, wow, we have made so much progress in the past couple of years. And for the people who are frankly kind of newer to the movement, they're like not understanding all of the work that has happened before even an Andrew Yang run to build up the UBI movement so that it could be an idea that even Andrew Yang himself has heard about. So there's a lot of like groundwork that needs to be done. Movements don't just happen overnight. They usually take, frankly, like a decade or two to be able to come to fruition, potentially even much longer, especially when it comes to issues surrounding usually identity factors. But yeah, like you have to just keep working and building it up, because if you just give up, that's how the movements die. A movement never dies until the people give up.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not stopping.
Same. I'm going harder this year. I think this is the year of the protest, you know? I think this is when we really force a lot of officials to reckon with what we can do.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be discouraging. I just think we got to ask the tough questions and make sure we're not deluding ourselves and not wasting our efforts.
And that's great. And we definitely need to, like John was saying, build in those efficiencies.
Building parallel institutions is the general theme. And I think we are doing it, so that's good.
Yeah, I'm literally on this basic income train, ride or die, because the way I see it, we have two futures. We either have the Mad Max future, in which we do not achieve basic income, or we have the Star Trek future, in which we do. And there aren't really many other options.
Yeah, I think we're all with you there. That's why we're here.
It's quite short.
We've all come to that realization on our own terms in our own different ways. So that's heartening. It's just that everyone needs to also come to that realization the same as us.
Yes.
Well, and I just want to remind people though, and Faye was here and now she's gone again, but that there are lots of people who are already very hip to all of this and are already out there doing their own thing. They're being their independent nomadic selves. They're living off the grid. They're boondocking across the country. And it's more people than any formal estimate is ever going to be able to count, because those people don't want to be counted anymore. A huge majority of them. They don't want to be bothered. And for the most part, they're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to say about the idea of convincing people, I had cited the poll before about like how many people, frankly, support the idea of cash relief. It's like right now at 83%. And so to me, it is less a factor of trying to convince people that UBI is a good idea, and it is more a factor of making UBI a priority. People can like the idea in concept, but if it's not a factor that they're casting their vote upon, it means very little. So that has to be something as almost a litmus test. I have my own personal litmus test. It is personally only 3 things. And litmus tests can't be too big. Otherwise, you're going to end up having no candidates. No one's going to completely agree with you. But I have 3 things. My 3 things are: you must support universal basic income. That's number 1. Number 2 is you must support democracy reform measures of the For the People Act, the Democracy Vouchers Act, and either the Ranked Choice Voting Act or another form of alternative voting. And then 3rd, you must not take corrupt money, dark money. That is the 3rd thing. I need to know I can trust you.
That's very.
That is it. If you can do those 3 things, that's how you earn my support. And I think there's multiple levels of support. So there is the level of support of, I will always vote in an election. I'm not ever going to be a non-voter. And I will always choose who I think is the best candidate. And frankly, when you have systems that say, well, if you vote for this fringe candidate you think has a better policy platform, it might hurt this slightly better than the terrible candidate. Yeah, I'm going to actually factor that in until we can change the system to an alternative voting system.
The trolley problem just makes it so easy for you to be manipulated, is the thing. And I love what we're talking about here. Yeah.
But you got to keep pushing to get those reforms, and you got to make the incremental benefit decisions along the way.
I mean, my personal litmus test, I'm similar to you, but I'm a zealot for UBI. I'm such a zealot that it is my only litmus test. You can take dark money. I'll still vote for you if you are pro UBI.
But how do we know they're actually pro UBI and not pro winning your vote?
Well, I vote, and then if they change afterwards, I know. But at least then they were promoting UBI with their rhetoric while they were running, so it's not a total wash.
To that, I would argue Biden, because he promised basically the same $2,000 checks on day one just to get our vote in the Senate and for his presidency, and we haven't seen that. I think that's a really bad argument for distrusting a politician, because a lot of politicians give up on their promises on election day. Like, one takes bad money doesn't mean that they are going to give up any more than any other one will.
I think that one thing that we definitely need to do going forward is hold, especially the vice president, accountable.
Indeed.
She proposed in May of 2020, I forget the name of the exact act, but it was $2,000 a month retroactive to March 2020 and extending for, I think it was 3 months after the health department has said that the COVID crisis is over.
No. It was tied to unemployment rate. So it was when we got our unemployment back to pre-pandemic levels.
Yep.
So it was even.
That will never happen, by the way. We are literally never going to get back pre-pandemic levels of employment.
Yes. That's a great point to bring up as well. Is there's a lot of doubt that we'll be able to get under that magic 4% again, even with our horrible definition.
My thing with that is, it's like, okay, whether it was for pre-pandemic levels of unemployment or the pandemic's over, we still need to hold this administration accountable to, well, especially Kamala, because, I mean, she put her name on this bill. And even if she was just doing it to sound good, well, she put her name on the bill, and we cannot hold her to it.
And frankly, she's going to be an influence in politics for a much longer time than Joe Biden, just by the virtue of the fact that she is going to live longer.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And I know she might not actually believe it. Who knows? But I love just being able to use it against her and Biden. Oh boy. Yeah, it is such ammo. Absolutely. It is a great way to even counter the argument. Like, you know, I get into more often with the people who generally are more supportive of like the moderate centrist base, like the very loyalist to vote blues, no matter who. They will frequently be like, if you bring up just the 2,000 one time versus 1,400 one time, they get like all defensive. Like, no, can't you do math? 1,400 plus 600 equals 2,000. That's all that was promised. It's just doing that amendment that we wanted from before.
And this is where
But then if you do this bill, they can't, because I'm not making that argument. I'm saying, hey, at one point you said a one-time check isn't enough and sponsored a whole bill because of that. And now you're saying one-time check is enough. And I mean, to just address the other argument, like the just one $2,000 check versus one $1,400 check, it is a lie on the Biden's part. Like, it is just a flat-out lie on a couple factors. One, the actual bill that was signed into place by President Trump at the time happened on the 26th of December. The checks had been already sent out the door. People had been receiving it before Joe Biden had made the promise on January 4th to say that $2,000 checks are going to go immediately out the door if you elect them. So that's one, the actual rhetoric being said. But then two, on an actual economic level, I ask people this. If you had a boss who is trying to, give you your paycheck and they give you 30% of what your paycheck is, and then they deliver the other 70%, maybe 3 months later, or maybe never, do you count that as a full paycheck? No, I don't. I'm expecting now my other paycheck. So this is just fundamentally a gross lie. And then like general economics, not just think the boss scenario. People have to understand there's a time value of money. If you receive money earlier, you can use that money to either invest in yourself and create returns on that investment that are going to make that money now worth more than later. Like that is just a common fact of how money is used. And so to say that it's $2,000 because you get $600 before and $1,400 3 months later, no, that $1,400 isn't worth $1,400 compared to when it was December.
Guys,
it's worth less now.
I think we all know Joe Biden meant $500 in June. We know that. That's what he meant. It's not fair to pretend he meant anything else.
It's just frustrating.
But that's not what he said, Shale.
He said $500 in June. That's what he said.
When? When did he say that?
I gotta go. Blue no matter who.
He's being hyperbolic, Kai. Don't worry. It's not a real thing.
But that's kind of part. That's kind of part of my shtick too. Right now is that when do we as a nation say stop gaslighting us?
We have no power to. Is the thing. We can say it all the time, and they just keep doing it. There's no mechanism.
How do we stand up to it and tell them, okay, you suck, and no, you don't get to make the rules anymore. I'm done with you.
For me, I think that this will only occur once we have a general strike. But I also feel that we will probably not have a general strike for the simple reason that Americans are workaholics. And we have such a workist culture that what I think will ultimately happen is that enough people will no longer be able to even go to work. Like their conditions of their lives will be so bad that they are not even able to continue working. That is what causes the general strike. It won't be because people are not working because they don't want to work. It's because they literally can't work. And I think at that point, that's when we will say, "Fuck this shit." And
well, we're kind of there. Like that's
we're not there yet, but we are really, really close.
Well, I think we just need to harp on it. Then.
Give us another 18 months of this pandemic.
Not going away, by the way.
Yeah, this pandemic definitely isn't exactly going away. Even when we're vaccinated, ideally this year.
Yes, you also have to deal with the mutant strains in which the vaccines that have already been developed are only partially effective against.
And I'm going to remind, if this pandemic is anything like the pandemic of 1918, the second year was much worse. The illness got much worse.
Oh,
People died much faster. People died in less than 12 hours of first onset of symptoms with the flu. And we have vaccines for the flu that not everybody gets every year. So, I think that it's a mistake for us to think that, again, I'm back on the time thing, is we can have a million different strategies. They all take 10 years at least to become effective in making widespread change happen. We don't have that right now. It just makes me scared. I just watched what happened in Texas. It makes me scared.
Yeah, see,
the problem is not that we don't know there needs to be more done. It's that if you can't do those things, then you might as well be doing something. It's better to be acting on a 10-year plan than to be acting on no plan that won't happen.
Yeah, see that my single greatest fear of my campaign is that it will be too little too late, even if I win. That is what scares me the most, that we may already be past the tipping point for climate change. In fact, I think we probably are past the tipping point for it to go to shit, but we might not be past the tipping point for the collapse of the Gulf Stream, which would be the worst thing to ever happen to civilization.
Mm-hmm.
We might not be past that point, but what worries me is that with both climate change and with artificial intelligence, that even if I win, I will not be stepping foot into Washington until 2023. In which case, that is what? That's another doubling of Moore's Law. That is...
I mean,
Well,
Eric, my only concern with that is like, here's the thing. Like, we are always going to just be trying to mitigate how much damage is done. Like, that's always the thing. We're always going to try and slow down how much death happens.
70s.
And so, like, if it's going to accelerate, there's going to eventually be a natural capacity curve where we're going to eventually have things reduce. Like, the whole goal is just trying to mitigate death. That is really it. Slow things down from happening as quickly so that we can build up our technological capacity to more easily try and reverse these trends.
I'm sorry I'm laughing, but yeah, that. I like how you said it. Yeah, we're focused on mitigating death. That's like the human story, and explains also why we've been so successful at making so many of us.
Yeah, and I wanted to also go back to a point that was being made before about general strikes. People are feeling like it's impossible, but I want people to recall we literally had a general strike in 2020 that actually led to results. People might forget that workers at Amazon, Instacart, Target, Walmart, Whole Foods, they organized a national strike on International Workers' Day in 2020, and they didn't demand the same demands that we did. Basically, their demands were that they were looking for sick time off, hazard pay, limited customer access, shifting to doing only pickup in their stores. And they had support from labor groups like the AFL-CIO, the UFCW, and it led to results. Target had basically said they're going to put in an additional $300 million. Certain provisions got into the original CARES Act. Like, there are things that had occurred from a general strike. It's just, we got to do that more often because it had been a while since we had done it. But I hope people actually learn more about that general strike so they feel it's more possible. So hopefully it happens more often.
Well, currently I'm general striking every day.
That's
me too.
Yeah, but
well, you said you wanted more people to learn about that strike. Well, guess what? I pay attention to politics a lot, and I had never even heard of that general strike until just now. So I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure how effective that is. I mean, I had heard there were strikes going on, but I didn't know that they had ever been effective. So that clearly was not communicated.
That goes to the conversation we had about the media, and that's part of the role of what we as new media are supposed to amplify. And so, yeah, you know what? I will take some onus on myself. I have not covered that on my program previously, and I have not talked about it nearly enough as I should. But maybe that is something that I need to personally put more of an effort so people know about that, because it did happen, and people should feel encouraged that these things work when we actually organize.
They do. Like, our democracy may be flawed, but it's only flawed because we allowed it to backslide so far and let the upper class win so hard for so long with our systems. We will take them back, and we are. Like, 2020 was a great year. I know it wasn't the big blue wave a lot of people were painting it as, but we got a lot of good progressives in Congress.
Yeah, I got one in my district, frankly. We got Mondaire Jones elected. So electoralism is a steady process. It's usually a generational change. And this is one of the reasons why term limits as an idea is important, so that you have a little bit more refreshing of the populace. If you think about the Democratic Party leadership, 1, 2, and 3 in the Democratic Party are all over the age of 80. And so they're going to have to eventually step down, because they're eventually going to either die in office or they're going to retire. And so we have to just put as many people as possible in that are good faith actors to have the best chance of retaking over the party. Sometimes you got to work within the system to change it. And that's, I think, a lot of what Yang kind of does as his approach is, not just fully going in line with the system and just being sheeple, essentially, call out like what are things that are going wrong that we're not addressing. But also, you can't just take a approach of just always attacking these people, because then they're going to just view you as just pure enemies, not people who can potentially work with them on a couple issues or might allow you to save face if you want to change your policy over time. You have to give people a way to save face and change. That's natural in humans. We grow, we adapt. Society shifts. Like, there's a reason why the local movements of like the LGBT movement was so effective. It took time and they were building it up. And it basically came crashing down where if they didn't support it, it was going to cost them. And so we have to just get to that same point. Force people to change. And it's a steady process, but we got to just do the best that we can and just keep going and not give up.
One thing I've definitely learned in my stint as a political hobbyist before I decided to do anything meaningful is you have to make sure that your ideas actually get past the mental barriers that people have. You have to actually pull an emotional bounce on them, where if they are so against you, you have to paint it as if it's their own flaw, because it is. They have to work through their own barriers and their own issues to see why these policies are better. So it's definitely a long, very human process. Lots of dead air.
I'm thinking about the stuff that's said.
You
know, it's like I say, I don't like markets. That was, I mean, like, dead air is totally unacceptable from an entertainment standpoint. But I think having a moment to digest a profound, a bit of speaking is a good thing. So what do you want? You know?
Yeah, that's.
If we want to talk about like content that I have found works pretty well, I don't know if any of you remember back during the Yang campaign, I had this project called Every Single Month, where I would basically have how much the Yang's Freedom Dividend would give to every single town in the country.
I love that.
Oh,
that was my favorite. You were one of my favorite. That project that you were doing was one of my absolute favorite things.
Oh, that was you? I didn't even know that was you. That was really good.
Me.
Yeah, I was a big follower of that.
But I've actually what I had found is that I personally came to the realization under Yang's plan that, oh my God, the town I live in, Middletown, Connecticut. Well, I've actually done this every single month thing in far more detail for every single town in my district. So, but I remember that for Middletown, Yang's plan would have brought in like $42 million a month into our town. And I'm just like, I had just gotten a thing in the mail shortly before I started it on how the town wanted to spend $2 million rebuilding Main Street, rebuilding redoing the sidewalks and stuff. And
just the literal Main Street, like just an infrastructure project?
Yeah.
Like not a business development project, literally just refurbishing Main Street.
Yes. $2 million $2 million to refurbish the whole thing from end to end.
Similar project a decade ago in Lawrence, Kansas, where University of Kansas is, which is probably the most liberal community in all of Kansas. They spent like $1.5 million widening one of the main city sidewalks to just make it easier for people to like walk up and down the streets where all the shops were.
Yep. But the thing that hit me with that is like, you're telling me that Andrew Yang wants to put $42 million into the pockets of people of Middletown, and the city is wringing its hands over a couple $1 million for widening Main Street. It's like, that is literally chump change compared to what would be coming into the city. It would literally, I mean, $42 million a month, I forget what that is a year, is a lot. But
well, that reminds me of DC, because DC, Washington, DC, is the district that has the highest or average tax rate across all forms of income, because there's so much cash flowing into that city through various political groups, lobbying groups, business groups. I mean, there's just so much money flooding into that city that that city's government just has a ton of money.
Mhm.
It really boggles me that we call ourselves capitalist and we don't understand the most basic function of wealth building, which is cycling currency.
Well, what I was getting at was that finding the right framing for this conversation of UBI at the how much will my town make every single month? Not how much am I going to make? I might not need $1,000 a month. Maybe I'm rich. But considering it's like, what will my town need? Like, okay, $42 million come into my town every single month. That's a huge amount of money for any size city. But you're talking like towns of like 7,000 getting $6 million a month. It's like, that town has probably not seen $6 million flow through it in the past 10 years.
Yeah. And that's really what people aren't getting when I say, when we say that we can do so much more to supply our demand, because we have so many more goods and so many more things that we can produce, but we don't know who actually wants these things because no one has cash to pay for these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a liquidity crisis, and it's kind of difficult to express that to people in a simple emotional way other than, do you love your neighbor? Do you think they should be able to pay for rent, pay for food, pay for utilities, regardless of everything else?
See, I know that argument definitely works on some people, but I don't know how effective that argument would be on others. I mean, I come at it from a stance of, oh, who left?
It's just May.
Oh. I come at it at a stance from like how Scott Santons does it. It's like, businesses need customers and customers need cash. If you want to help our small businesses, you need to support giving their customers cash. Because we had half of our small businesses close in 2020. And that is going to take a lot of freaking money to bring back at least some of them and help new people build new ones to recover from the destruction that has happened in our country.
And again, you're making very successfully a classical conservative argument as to why a basic income makes all kinds of sense for everybody that claims to love capitalism. It doesn't work. The game of Monopoly, you start out with money in the bank and you get a paycheck every time you go around the board, barring adverse events. But we don't do that here. And that's the problem.
And I definitely feel that small business argument closely as well, but we've been saying it for like a year now that small businesses are going under. Not just a year, for a couple of years now. Like Yang really highlighted, I think, that we weren't doing enough for small businesses. Like, not just with the failures of our federal programs, but just lack of access to credit, to actual banking that people can use. And then the cash was really just another problem that small businesses needed. So I think we need a more personable, emotional connection than hoping that we all just love small businesses so much.
I think we should come at it from the personal emotional connection. We should come at it from the business connection. We should come at it from the sociological direction. We should come at this from literally every angle we can think of, because different arguments will work on different people.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. We just need to throw everything at the wall, get everyone to stick.
So what I saw videos about progressive advocates going out and doing door knocking, and I can't think of the deep canvassing. That's what you guys are kind of talking about. It's that deep canvassing style of find out what motivates people and then use that as your hook to help them see the basic income through the lens of what's important to them and how the basic income helps fix that problem. Because almost everybody's going to have a number one issue be somehow connected to a basic income.
That's a good place to approach it. You got to know your audience, know what's going to move them. About 5 minutes to 4. This was a really good show. So we could probably just wrap it up here. If any of you guys want to give your sign-offs or anything.
Sure. I can go first. So I want to thank y'all again for having me on for the Yanggang Roundtable. For people who want to keep in contact with me, you can do it in 2 places. You can come join us at the People's Basics. You can come to our Discord, especially if you want to organize with us. And then furthermore, you could check out our content. It comes out on YouTube. It comes out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and SoundCloud. And then finally, if you just want to follow me personally, you could find me at Jon Munitz. Thank you guys again for having me on. It was a pleasure being able to talk with you all.
John, before you leave, please leave your links in the chat in text form too, so we can include them in the description on the YouTube and stuff.
Yeah, just noticing that your recording bot is no longer in the chat.
Yeah, that happens. It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I guess I will go next. Thank you so much for joining us, John. You are a wealth of information, and we will hopefully have you on again as the midterms draw a little bit closer. Because I think that this channel is definitely going to attract a lot more candidates as we get that grassroots growing. You can find me, our wonderful audience, at lund2022.com. You can click on all of our various links of social media there and our Discord server to organize, donate, and send my campaign a concern if you are a local constituent.
Thank you. So, who else is running? Kaizen, you're not running right now. But man, fantastic. Jon Munitz, if you want to run again too, don't rule it out. It seems like, we have to be the army of legislators, I guess, now. So, maybe I'll run one of these days. If I ran, that would just be such a rabble-rouser.
I'll let you guys know that I fully anticipate that I will run, but at a point in which I have settled down in my life, have been married, have kids. I want to focus on my own life and focusing on advocacy and, frankly, building up my own platform more before I get involved in running myself.
Well, that sounds good. If you can do that, do it. That's great.
Yes. So ladies out there, hey.
Oh, all right. Phase 1.
Oh, he wants the family.
All right. Well,
yeah.
Well, if you leave your link in the Discord, I'll join your Discord. Definitely keep in touch. I post the schedule every Thursday here. So if you ever want to check in, see if there's someone you'd like to talk to who's going to be on the show, pop in. It's informal. You never have to announce yourself. You can sit in and lurk, or you can monopolize the conversation as much as you feel you should. You're always welcome here, and you're just a fantastic guest. And
Thank you.
I love having you, and I hope we get to talk more. So I will join your Discord. I will join your Discord, and I will try to be more involved with the People's Basics too myself, because it sounds like something we really need. So Kaizen, do you want to say goodbye?
Let's let Eric do his outro.
Yes,
Since
Eric.
he's running.
Of
And then
course.
I'll go before you.
All right, that's a good plan.
Well, not really sure what to do with an outro. I was kind
What's
of
your
doing
website? So your website isn't ready to take donations yet.
Yes, my
That's fine.
website is not ready to take donations.
Just give us
That
your
is
Twitter.
why-
That's what's key.
My Twitter is at Eric Storesund. Again, it's ErikStoresund. Yes, I have a hard name to spell, and most people, even my boss, still misspells, or my old boss, misspelled my first name until the day I left.
If you care about basic income, go to Twitter, take the moment, and put in Eric Storesund. Add him.
Yes.
Keep track of him. Keep track of Sheridan. Keep track of John. Keep track of me and Kaizen. Add us all on Twitter.
Yes, add us all on Twitter, and subscribe to our websites.
Yes. Get
And
on our
if you
new.
have money, send them money.
Yes, if you have money, send us money. You can't really send campaign donations, but I do take PayPal right now. If you just want to send me money,
That's the way.
I'm always taking money. If anyone wants to give me money,
And mine is secure.actblue.com/2K checks, because that was the promise.
Hell yeah.
you got 2K checks as your Act Blue. That's good.
Yeah, I know, right? I couldn't believe it was just available.
Hell yeah. We gotta run with that.
Monthly cash 2K and my Lund 2022 generic. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm currently thinking about getting like 4 more domain names to direct to my website. So
yeah, maybe like Eric for Congress, just something that's easier for people to spell. You have an easy name. It's Eric Storesund with a K. It's super easy.
I'd be surprised how many people get it wrong.
People get Sheridan wrong, and I'm like, it's an easy name, guys.
I always want to put an E at the end of it.
But guys, third grade reading level. We're still at third grade reading level. High school graduates with a third grade reading level. It's a true story. I've taught those guys.
I gotta tell you a funny story on the name front. So I told you all that I had run for office briefly back in 2019. But here's the ironic thing. So my name is Jon Munitz, but the person who ran previously, who ran against this incumbent as a Republican challenger, their name was Jon Munitz. Basically, add an H to the first name, drop the T in the last name. And so frequently that would actually be a challenge for me. Most people, when they first met me, thought I was that Republican.
That's so uncanny. It's like a glitch in the Matrix. It's ridiculous.
But yeah,
man,
I get my name wrong a lot.
I'm glad I have a pretty unique name. Like, no one's going to be able to forget Sheridan Lund on a ballot.
Yeah, it's true. I also benefit from a unique name. It's a good thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, I have a ethnic name. It's white ethnic, but it's still ethnic, and I still get comments on it. It's like, what ethnicity is? Where's that from? Where's that name from? I'm like, Norway. It's from Norway.
Oh, there you go. All right. Kaizen, did you say goodbye?
I have not, but I am at KAIZENKC on Twitter, PayPal, Patreon, Cash App, whatever. Find me. I'm out there.
Thank you, Kaizen.
We will find you and we will get you money.
I'm Shale Riley. My Twitter is Shale Riley, SHAELRILEY on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for speaking. This was a really good show. We'll be back tomorrow, 2 to 4, with more basic income advocacy. Be good to each other. We love you. Goodbye.
Glad to be here.
Bye-bye.